Cybersecurity is not an IT problem. Cybersecurity is not a technical problem. Cybersecurity is a business problem. Period. If we could get that, if people could understand that and behave and act that way, everything shifts. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. Hopefully, you know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. I'm just so pumped I had to jump in to the studio and record this session because I just got off my 2-hour coaching call with my CISO clients. That's the CISO certification. That's our mid-tier program, what we recommend for most folks, where you get 6 months of training focus. You get monthly calls with me where we dive deep. We just did 6 hot seats where we spent about 15, 20 minutes with each person really diving into what they're doing, where their challenges are, what they're up against, and I love it. And I'm energized, but it really brought up a theme. Like it seems like each week, each month, each time I do coaching, there's these themes that emerge. And the one that I really want to talk about on this podcast, which if you get this concept, it differentiates you from most security professionals and most CISOs. And it makes you one of the most valuable assets to your organization, and it's this fact. Cybersecurity is not an IT problem. Cybersecurity is not a technical problem. Cybersecurity is a business problem. Period. If we could get that, if people could understand that and behave and act that way, everything shifts. But the problem that we have in cybersecurity is executives and boards and cybersecurity professionals all think it's a technical problem. If we spend money, we buy technology, it solves the problem. And it doesn't. Because the reality is this: we are not dealing with a technical issue. Now, what caused all this confusion and all this problem is because IT came out before cyber. And it makes sense. You have to have an IT infrastructure to have something to secure. Right? How are you going to secure bits and bytes and information if you don't have bits and bytes of information? How are you going to secure and control the flow of data if you don't have router switches and servers all in place? So IT needed to come first. However, IT is all about technical solutions. It's all about uptime availability. IT is quite simple. If the data flows, you win. If the data doesn't flow, you lose. Essentially, it's availability, availability, availability. IT is all about uptime. Is the infrastructure available to those who need it? If I go into work and I turn on my computer, is the server system's data available for me to be able to do my job? When our customers go to www.secureanchor.com, is the website available? Is the e-commerce available? Is the data available that they need? That's all IT worries about. IT is all about uptime availability. And if you've ever been a CIO, which I was early on in my career in the late 90s, which I tell you was amazing times, because I was a CIO around Y2K. I tell you, we need another Y2K. That was like the most awesome of times. Essentially, with Y2K, we convinced, I don't know how we did it, but somehow we convinced executives that the world was going to end at midnight on December 31st, 1999, unless they did everything we wanted. It was amazing. I could go into executives and I could say, in 1988, 1999, I need $1 million for a Ferrari. And they'd be like, okay, first of all, Ferraris aren't $1 million. You can get one for $400K. But regardless, what in the world does a Ferrari need to do with anything with IT? I'd be like, okay. And as I walk away, I'd go, Y2K. Wait. It impacts Y2K? Yep. Okay. You could have $1 million for, it's crazy times, right? It was great, right? I joke around, but the reality is if you, I know some of you that were around there, it was literally that insane that like, if you just said Y2K, you could get funding for anything. It was ridiculous at levels beyond ridiculous. But hey, good times. I'm glad I was there to enjoy it, but here we are today. But the point is, as a CIO, it's a simple metrics. Uptime availability. 99.99%. It's called the 5 nines. Right, so if you ever talk to a CIO, you've been in board meetings or they brief on it, it's always, oh, how are we doing with the 5 nines? How are we doing with the 5 nines? 5 nines means that you must implement 99.999% uptime availability, not including scheduled downtime, because of course there has to be maintenance windows and things like that. Well, let me help you out here. Meeting 5 nines is a technical problem. If you have enough redundancy, if you have enough failover, and you are willing to spend enough money, you can meet 5 nines. If not, then you don't. For example, if I'm only willing to have one router in place for our entire website, our entire e-commerce solution, and that router fails, and it takes 2 days to get a new router, we are down for 48 hours, and we have not met our 99.99% uptime availability for the month. Simple, we failed. So that month, we failed. However, if I go in and I buy 2 routers, now, if one router fails, the other one takes over, and now I've met the 99.99% uptime availability until I can buy a second router to replace the first one that failed. But what if both routers fail? Well, what is the probability and the math? And you do the math behind that and go, what's the probability versus how long would it take to replace? And go, okay, let's have 3 routers. So now, if one router fails and a second router fails, which that probability is so low, then you have a third, and the probability of 3 routers failing is almost null, so that will allow us to meet our 99.999% uptime availability. So it's really just a technical problem. It's really just a math problem. You run the math, you run the probabilities, you spend enough money, and you can meet your 5 nines. So IT, I'm not underplaying. Right? It's still a stressful job. You still have a lot of tracking. There's a lot of infrastructure. I'm not trying to downplay it, but the point is, it is an availability problem. It's a technical problem. And if you have the right budget and infrastructure, you can solve it. It is a solvable problem. You can meet the 5 nines. It is a doable problem. In walks security. So then IT's out in the 90s, everyone's using the web, security comes in many years later, and everyone just automatically groups it under IT, assumes it's a technical problem, and the challenge begins. Because here's the reality. Cybersecurity is about risk. That's not technical. And risk is business. What risk are you willing to take? Because let me break down cyber. Cybersecurity is so easy. We just make it so complicated. Here is cybersecurity. Easy, simple, straightforward, in a nice pretty box with a bow on it. Whenever you make a decision, whenever you're trying to decide what to do in the organization, you always start with two questions. What is the value or benefit we get from doing this? What is the risk or exposure that this presents? Because the reality is quite simple. In any realistic mechanism, 100% security doesn't exist. Now, if we want to pull the string on that, and let's just have a little fun, because that's what we're all about here, right? Fun time with Dr. Cole, right? Life of a CISO. If you're not having fun, I'll tell you. If you don't get done listening to my Life of a CISO and you're not in a good mood, I don't know. One of us is doing something wrong, because I tell you, I have a fun time here. I can be in the worst mood possible. My team will sometimes do that. If I'm in a bad mood, they're like, Eric, go record a podcast. Because I love doing this. It always puts me in a good mood. So if you're not happy when we get done, right, I didn't do my job here, because we got to have fun, but hopefully you learn a lot in the process. So in any practical sense, 100% security doesn't exist. But I'll just give you a little story. So I give a lot of keynotes. I actually love them. Getting back on stages now, right? It's funny how certain things took a while to recover from COVID. And events and conferences and keynotes, I mean, they're just coming back this year. Even though technically it's been a year or two since COVID, it's just starting to come back here, getting on stages and enjoying it. So I always had a slide on one of my keynotes that I give, which says 100% security doesn't exist. And I don't know why, it was earlier this year, but I was giving that presentation, and the slides are behind me, and I sort of look back, look at the audience and go, is that really true? I know I'm saying 100% security doesn't exist, but is that really true? So I said, what if I take a computer, I turn it off, I smash it to pieces, and I bury it in a hole and fill it with cement? Isn't that pretty close to 100% security? And everyone in the audience just sort of nodding their head. So I'm like, cool. So technically, if we went just crazy, and we just went crazy and really went to that extreme measure, we could theoretically get 100% security. What's the problem? There's no benefit. It's a useless system. Completely useless. So this is when I developed the chart and what I call the law of cybersecurity. So essentially, if you have security on one side and you have functionality on the other. And on security, you have 100% security at the top and 0 at the bottom. And functionality is the opposite. You have 0 at the top and 100. So essentially, if I'm at 100% security, I have 0 functionality. And if I'm at 100% functionality, I have 0 security. And then the goal is to find that spot in between. So the law of cyber is pretty easy. Every time you add functionality, you decrease security. Or if you like to do it another way, anytime you add functionality, you increase risk. So that's sort of your law. It is a law. It's always at play. It's sometimes I joke around when people come to me, Eric, I don't know if I agree with that law. I'm like, I don't care. Right? You don't have to agree with the law of gravity. You can say the law of gravity doesn't apply to you. But if you step off a 10-story building, it will be introduced to you whether you like it or not, right? So the point is, whether you agree or not, it's there. It's working. It's always at play, and you can't avoid it. So it comes down to when you add functionality, you decrease security. So the rule is simple. Is the benefit worth the risk? That's cybersecurity in a box with a bow on it. So if we can just get people to make the decision, what is the value and benefit of this decision? What is the risk or exposure? Is the value and benefit worth the risk or exposure? Yes, do it. No, don't. Boom. In 14 minutes, we just solved the problem of cybersecurity. We just demystified all the issues. But notice, that's a business problem. That's a business issue. That's not technical. Whether this functionality is more valuable to the business than the risk to the business is a business problem. It's not technical. You're not going to fix this with technology. Yes, technology can reduce the risk, but it's still a business problem. Are you willing to accept this risk for this value or benefit? And the problem is boards miss it, executives miss it, and security people miss it. So we're not presenting the data the way that it should. And if we presented it that way, all of a sudden, cybersecurity becomes something that we can manage, deal with, and understand. But a couple of things need to be in place. First, we as security professionals need to do a better job communicating with the board. I was actually on a panel discussion yesterday, and they asked us a question. What is the biggest challenge or issue in cybersecurity today? You know what my answer was? The biggest challenge in cybersecurity today is CISOs are awful marketers. We do not market the value or benefit of what we're providing to the executive team. They have no clue what we're doing, and that is problematic. I see this all the time. I sit there in board meetings, I talk to executives, I go out to lunch and dinner with executives all the time, and I see the same trend over and over again, and it's this. When the board is asked about IT, so how's IT going in the organization? Oh, it's great. We've exceeded our 5 nines for the last 7 months, and our network is very stable, and we have great uptime availability. Why? Because the IT, the CIO, is a good marketer. He or she gives them the data, gives them the updates, gives them charts, makes them aware, shows them, sells them on the return on investment they're getting. And we go to finance, and you ask the board, how is the business doing financially? Well, last quarter wasn't as good, but this quarter is looking a lot better. We made some adjustments. We changed some pricing. We cut some margins, and we were able to sort of increase profitability. So things are looking good, and we're confident we're going to finish the year being able to hit or exceed our targets. Why? Because the CFO is a good marketer. Communicated, told them, give them the data, give them the spreadsheets, give them the information they need. And I could continue, but I'll do one more. I'll ask, how is research and development? Oh, Eric, we are so excited because we just started a new research project. We're 3 months in, but it looks so promising, the results. We'll have more information about 9 months, but this could lead to $1 billion business line with huge margins because we are way ahead of the competition. And this is just such a unique technology that's going to drastically revolutionize how people work in this field. And we're going to be the leading player in this space. And you say, well, how do they know that? Because the director of R&D is a brilliant marketer. But then, we go to security. And I go, how's security? And they're like, I guess it's good. We haven't had breach. We haven't really had a compromise, so I assume we're doing good. But I really don't know. Why? Because security doesn't communicate. We still think it's an IT problem, and we still have too many CISOs that are security engineers. They want to be security engineers. CISOs must communicate. CISOs must be brilliant marketers. We must do a better job of communicating the value and benefit to the organization. And there's a three-phased approach that I use. First phase, general awareness on return on investment. Why do security budgets get cut? Very, very simple. I'll give you the simple answer, and then I'll give you a more detailed answer. The simple answer is this: they don't believe they're getting value. I'm just going to make it simple for you. Remember, love in my heart, I love and I care about every one of you. So please don't get mad or upset. But the reality is this: if you're spending money on something and you think you're getting value, you're going to keep spending money on it. If you're spending money on something and you don't think you're getting value, you stop spending money on it. So if your overhead, which security is viewed that way, I'll show you how you shift it because it shouldn't be, but if it's viewed that way, and your budget is getting cut, it is quite simple. The executives do not think they're getting value. Because if they thought they were getting value, they wouldn't cut your budget. If they thought they were getting amazing value, they'd increase your budget. But the only reason why they're cutting your budget is they don't think they're getting value. Plain, simple, easy. Accept it, own it. So you need to do a better job of showing value. So then the question is, how can we do a better job at showing value? And the way you do a better job of showing value is communicating value. Like I said, one of the biggest issues in cybersecurity is CISOs don't communicate. We just go in and we assume that executives know the great job we're doing. They assume that, oh, they know all the hard work, but the reality is they don't. And like we said, the reason why they cut budgets is because they don't assume they're getting value. And the reason is they don't see anything. So in their minds, they're like, okay, we haven't had a breach in a year, and we wouldn't have had a breach because we got lucky, so security really didn't do anything. In their minds, breaches happen when you're unlucky, and you don't get breached when you're lucky. It has nothing to do with security, which is crazy. And of course it has everything to do, but here's the problem. How do we expect them to know that? How do we expect them to know that if we don't communicate it? So the first thing I told you, there's three phases I use. The three phases of maturity of briefing a board. First phase, general return on investment. Just show some general value you're getting. My favorite one, that if you've listened to my podcast, you probably know this, I haven't talked about it in a while, is number of attempted attacks. It's simple. Just go to your firewall and look at the number of block packets and present that. Do you realize that we have 10,000 attempted attacks a week and 2,000 attempted attacks a day against our organization? I will tell you, it'll blow their mind. Most executives, zero clue. Zero clue of how bad the problem is. I ask executives all the time, I'm like, how many attempted attacks do you think there are against your organization? And most of them single digits. 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7. Now, one executive that's super analytical, I asked him, I said, you said 7. How'd you come up with that number? This is mind-boggling. They go, Eric, it was quite simple. I'm not being told, which in my mind means it's not significant. And to me, if there was more than one attack a day, it would be significant. And therefore, because my team's not telling me, I'm assuming it has to be one a day or less, so I said 7 for 7 days in the week. I can't imagine it would be any higher than that, because if it was, that would be communicated to me. And I'm sitting there going, they're right. So why aren't we communicating? The fact that you're getting attacked 10,000 times a week and defending against it, that's a significant number, my friends. How come we're not communicating it? Now, techies love to argue with me. They go, Eric, blocked packets in a firewall is not technically an attempted attack. Yeah, it is. Why are you blocking it then? If it's good, if it's legit, you'd allow it in. So clearly, if you're blocking it, it's bad. Okay, Eric, but there's different severity. Yeah, but you're overthinking it. The point is, it's a good data point and it's a simple data point. Now, if you want to come up with other data points, that's great, but two things. They need to be simple, they need to be understood, and they need to be easily accessible. So it's a good starting point. It's a good data point. The reality is there are 10,000 bad things that you are blocking every week. That's a very valuable data point because it changes everything. If your executives think there's 7 attacks a week that you're blocking, I guess I should do 7 and not 6. We have fun here. I told you we have a good time. We have a good time when we're in the studio of happiness. Right? But the point is, if they think it's 7, that's a small problem. And it's 10,000, it's a big problem. Isn't that a pretty big differential? I will tell you, I've seen CISOs, all they did was on a weekly basis, send out a simple email. Number of blocked attacks, number of attempted attacks, whatever you want to call it. Just wanted to let you know this week there's been 12,000 attempted attacks against the organization. If you have any questions, let me know. That's simple. Now it's funny because I've had folks come back going, oh, Eric, I've tried that approach and it doesn't work. And I'm like, really? You've sent a simple 1-sentence email. And they're like, no, Eric. I put together every month a 45-page, and I'm like, just stop. They're like, but you didn't hear what I said. I'm like, I heard 45-page slide deck. I don't need to hear anymore. Nobody is going to read that. Oh, but Eric, they need to know those details. No, they don't. Stop being a security engineer and put on your CISO pants. I hope you're wearing pants. If you're not, that gets scary. Right? Hey, but that's what's cool about podcasts, right? It's only the way stuff, right? So we're doing good. I told you we're going to have fun here today. Yeah, you're probably wondering what I'm on, but I'm in a good mood because I just did my coaching call. I'm always in a good mood when I get to spend some time with my friends and colleagues. But the point is, you got to be a CISO. Step up and be a CISO. CISOs are strategic, high level. You don't need to give details. You don't need to give explanation. Another person that said, oh, Eric, it doesn't work, they sent a 4-page email. No, simple 1-pager. Simple 1 sentence, not even 1-pager, 1 sentence. Number of blocked attacks, number of attempted attacks this week, 12,553. Boom. That's phase 1. You're showing return on investment. You're starting to show the value. Then we move to phase 2. Phase 2 is where you start switching from cybersecurity being an overhead to cybersecurity being a business enabler, where you're actually making money for the organization. So we just did this. One of our clients came very close to having a ransomware attack against their organization, in which this particular entity that does the ransomware, they've hit very similar companies to theirs, and it's about a $3 million ransom. And if you get hit, the only business solution is really to pay the ransom, because you get up to speed a lot quicker as opposed to trying to recover from scratch. So the point is, we were able to show and prove that we were able to catch and stop the ransomware attack, that if we didn't do the monitoring, we didn't have the team, we didn't have the technology in place, the company would have been hit with ransomware and would have had to pay $3 million in ransom. So we presented that. We said, just so you know, we just saved you $3 million. If this wasn't in place and we didn't do this, I mean, we're talking very close. Like, this was one of the very sophisticated attacks, very close, but the team had the proper mechanisms. They were able to divert some traffic, catch it, analyze it. So now you start getting to the point where you're actually showing the cost savings. We did this with another client where they were just about to wire the money. It was a phishing scam, basically changing the bank account for a big vendor, and it was a $1.2 million invoice. And they were just about ready to wire the money, and security caught it. Caught it, stopped it, prevented it. Once again, we just saved the company $1.2 million. Now, that's phase two. That's where you're now starting to show that you're a business enabler. You are actually saving the company money. You are actually stopping loss from occurring. And then the third phase, and this is the most level of maturity but requires you to be vulnerable, is now you bring the executives into the solution. You're now bringing the executives into the problem where you're saying, you're actually going to help me determine what the level of risk is. And I'll give an example of that. We had one client that their SIM, their Security Incident Event Management solution, was generating 800 alerts a day. The problem is their team could only handle 100. So essentially, there was 700 attacks that were going unaddressed. And many of these could have been detrimental to the organization, and some of them were more severe than others. Now, many security departments would either ignore it, say nothing, or leave it alone. Level 3 maturity. I went to the board and I said, here's the current problem. Our current SIM is generating 800 alerts. Our team can only handle 100. So right now, we're missing attacks. We're missing key attacks, and these aren't prioritized. We could continue in this manner, but I think this is insane. This is crazy. So we really have two options. Option one is we can tune down the SIM so it only catches the most critical of all attacks, but it only generates 100 alerts, and our team can handle 100. So now we're handling the top 100, but we're missing 700. So that's option one. Or option two, you can give us more people so we can handle the 800. The first one has a risk, but it doesn't increase our budget. The second one has a cost, but manages our risk. So which option, Mr. and Mrs. Execs, would you like us to do? Would you like us to lower the threshold so we're missing attacks but keep the budget the same? Or would you like to increase the budget so we can catch more of the advanced attacks? You get to choose. Neither one is necessarily right or wrong. It's based on cost, value, benefit, and risk to the organization. But now we're bringing the board in to the discussion and we're letting them choose. That's level 3 maturity. Now, instead of us deciding and being on the chopping block, we're now involving them in the decision and letting them choose which level of risk they want to accept. So if you want to crush it as a CISO, you want to be in the elite top tier of being world-class, recognize one simple fact: cybersecurity is a business problem.